And now back to your regular programming.
If you speak better to yourself.
You showed up for probably the dumbest conversation we've ever had on this show.
Let's have that smile again.
Tell me how that happens. Physically should not happen.
Relax.
If you say it
Give me as well.
3 times a day, God will line it up.
He's just an absolute hack, and he gets his ass kicked by the teammates every week. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to Hack City. Joe DeLeone, Sean Anderson, 2 former college football players from the University of Rhode Island. Also, I'm hosting this show with the largest toddler in America, iPad child. The facial hair is gone. I'm still trying to adapt to it. Today we are going to be recapping the comeback victory for Montana State, as well as our thoughts on the Tarleton victory over McNeese. All that coming up and more. Before we get to the Week 0 thoughts on this quick show, Sean, can you share with our listeners a quick word from BetOnline?
Yeah, fat baby face here, ready to teach you how to make some money, unlike me this weekend. Welcome back to football betting. Nice introduction, Anderson. 0 for 3 in my real life.
Yeah.
Lost just stink. I stunk yesterday, but I still had fun. It felt like I was at the game because I was gambling at BetOnline. That's where you need to go. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are even being played. Think you know your stuff? You probably do, unlike me. Get in on BetOnline's winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head on over to their online casino. They got the casino games. If you like doubling down on your winnings from sports betting, I couldn't go to the online casino because I had nothing. Head to the website today and use our promo code BELIEVE and get in on the action. That's BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Can you lower the phones, by the way? You love just getting blasted in the ears. Like, Jesus. It's like there we go. That's a lot better. All right, we're going to be recapping the FCS action. Don't scoff at me. That was loud.
Hey,
that was
Mr.
really a
Sensitive,
loud
you know
open.
What? I listened to too much loud music because
That might be it.
That was
a really
realistic
loud
level for me. I didn't touch the knob from yesterday, but you know what? I can be amenable.
I think you did.
I'm fine. And also, producers that run the board should have the cans cranked up a bit. But maybe I'll get an independent mic knob for us. That might be better, so I can have yours nice and low, and I can crank mine.
Okay. Yeah, I bet you love. Never mind. I was going to make a cranking it joke. I'm not going to do it. The first game we want to talk about here is Montana State versus New Mexico. They stormed back to win 35-31. Sean was taking his victory laps for ranking them as the number 1 team in the country, as many were questioning if there was validity to that ranking or if Montana State was going to be as good as many hoped they would be this season. I think the biggest thing for me, Sean, I'm still not in on them being the best team in the country. I'd love to see how some of these other top teams like Montana, North Dakota State, South Dakota State do in week 1. But I was extremely impressed by this team and especially Tommy Malot's ability to storm back, to fight when their backs were up against the wall in a seriously almost unovercomable deficit that they were dealing with in this game. New Mexico had them on their heels for most of it. They out-schemed them offensively for the beginning of it. They came and showed up to fight in the second half, and I think that it all comes down to that, is that they weren't going to allow the adversity that they had facing them to drag them down.
Yeah, it was a great football game. And I'll say this. If you all want to dance with me on Twitter all year about the Montana State number 1 pick, we can do that dance. I'm not a Montana State fan. I don't have allegiance to any FCS teams with the exception of Rhode Island having played there. So if anyone's going to be coming at me for my pick, don't do it from the guise of or from the viewpoint of, oh, Anderson's a fan, he picked him number 1. No, I picked him number 1 for a lot of the reasons we saw yesterday, which I'm still not happy about the result yesterday for Montana State. They were a 12.5-point favorite and got away with one because New Mexico pulled some New Mexico stuff, and they can't close out games, which they have been historically bad at the last 5 years. Regardless, if you want to do this dance, and every time Montana State looks like they're in trouble, you could shoot over the tweet. It's not really going to bother me, but it will get annoying. It just because I know I was the only one. Everyone's riding on the South Dakota State thing, and in our preview, I was not admonishing South Dakota State by any means. I just had this belief about Montana State. And at times yesterday, it showed why I had them at number 1. The running game was critical. They had 362 yards rushing. That's just what they do. 7.7 a clip and 3 touchdowns on the ground to 3 different rushers. That's what Montana State's going to do. They're going to run the ball like hell. And I like that Tommy Mellott seemed more comfortable in the second half. It was a rough first half. We watched the first half under a microscope, Joe. It looked like a week 0 game at the quarterback position for sure. Unbiasedly, he looked bad in the pocket. And then they got dialed in. They had some big splash plays. Adam Jones and Scottrey Humphrey stepped up big at running back and helped pick up the slack when the pass game wasn't going right with big chunk plays and big touchdowns.
I understand that the yards per attempt for Mellott wasn't great, and it was an observation that we kind of had watching this was because his stats kept popping up on the screen. It was abysmal, his yards per attempt. But in the second half, some of the plays he was able to connect on, especially on that, the game-winning drive that was put together, and the way that he was able to make some more consistent throws, despite the wind gusting as bad as it was, I was impressed. That had always been a concern for me with Mellott, even when he was rotating with Chambers, was can he be like a true passer? Can he be a true player that takes over the game through the air? 205 yards passing isn't exactly game-changing, but we are, I think, a little bit more exposed to a more seasoned and mature version of Mellott, and I think I feel pretty confident that later on in their schedule that he's going to do well. You mentioned the big thing that I was impressed by, which was Adam Jones and Scottrey Humphrey, who it feels like every year there's a new grouping of running backs that they turn to, and they had some serious production from the both of them. Mellott did okay on the ground, 9 for 30 and a touchdown, but the fact that they were able to get production out of those two guys, especially that 93-yard touchdown run by Adam Jones, it was pretty impressive. I think that with the issues that they had yesterday in the first half and the way that they recovered, I'm not necessarily worried about Montana State in the future. I think that the weather definitely played a lot into this, though. Like they clearly were not used to playing.
The heat looked rough
in an environment like this, and I'm really kind of curious, really quickly.
I don't know what the feel like was yesterday, but it was 93 in Albuquerque.
It was 93 in Albuquerque?
Yes, it was 93 in Albuquerque. And I'm on the turf. I'm sure it's hotter. And then you had what seemed to be a tornado in the town over throughout the entire second half, which if you're on Twitter yesterday watching the games, you had a great day because there was content everywhere. You had cameras falling. You had the wind blowing. It was a wild scene on that football field. And that's why I like Montana State winning it, because there was a lot of adversity. Yep. Those boys were pink. They were pink all game.
They were sunburnt. The whole offensive line, most of the offensive line was pretty sunburnt. A lot looked sunburnt. There looked like a lot of dudes that just were getting literally cooked on the field. And if you're not used to playing in it, heat is heat. Heat is difficult to play in no matter where it is. Yeah. But there's certain types that are categorized as something that's extremely brutal to deal with. Like the swampy heat in certain parts of the South, like where Florida plays, that has historically been a stadium that everyone says it's just insanely humid. And I would really be able to conjure a guess that Albuquerque is,
I think there's some crazy
the polar
elevation
opposite.
too.
Yeah, they output. Well, I mean, I don't know what the elevation of Billings, Montana is, but
I'm not sure either. I'm not the geography major here. But
I don't think that's geography. That's topography.
Okay. Oh, you're taking it. Okay. Well, then, what is cartography? The making of the maps while using geography and okay. Wow. All right.
Billings, Montana is 3,000 feet in the air, and then let's look at Albuquerque.
I don't know. I heard one of the broadcasters noting the elevation, and I'll say this: I thought the broadcast team did very well with the handling of Montana State.
5,000. I guess. Yeah. I guess it is quite.
It's almost mile high. Regardless, they got some love. The FS1 guys. They should have. I thought they did a fantastic job about noting Montana State. They always mentioned FCS. They noted history. They noted scores, wins, everything. I thought it was. We've come a long way from a couple national championships ago where it almost felt like the FCS was being made a mockery during their national championship with no coverage at halftime to now we're treating it a little more seriously. And I know it's week 0 and FS1 is going to be, they're not going to be airing another FCS game this year. Why would they? There's bigger money games and bigger markets. I understand that. But when there's an opportunity to shed some light and some positivity on the subconference, I appreciate it and I will note it.
I will say I would like to see Fox have some more of these FCS games. I think that Fox has some of the best broadcast booths in sports in general. It does really feel like ESPN kind of mails it in with some of their coverage, with some of their lower down broadcast booths, because there's a lot of guys, there's a lot of people that they stick in there that don't really do a ton of notes and also have not really paid much attention to FCS or understand. You don't need to know the full history, but just to know the dynamic and some of these fan bases and the attention that they get. Yeah, it's a little lame. You bring up a good point. I was pretty impressed by that. Definitely better than the CBS crew. The CBS crew was terrible.
Yeah, a little rough.
The SMU game that was.
I was not a big. Turpin's still working it out. I thought that
Turbin.
I thought it was
Robert Turbin.
Oh, Turbin. All right. I thought it was
Robert Turpin.
Regardless. New athletes that are going into an analyst or color commentary role, the first thing that they do that always bugs me is they jump on the call. They jump on the initial call and involve themselves instead of letting the call of the play develop and then adding themselves into it. And I blame McAfee for this because he historically had, when he was in the NFL booth, I think for a Packers game, they did a fake on a special teams. He couldn't hold it, and he started yelling, and people called it the best moment ever. It felt like a big internet moment, whatever. That led to athletes wanting to interject way more than where the time brings. Just if I was an athlete in the booth, I would study what Louis Riddick does. He is phenomenal with his timing of when he analyzes. He doesn't step over anybody. Yeah. And it's a good poise in the booth. I want poise in the booth, not what I would hear next to me in the stadium. That's where the pros are. To
stay back on track, talking about these games, McNeese-Tarleton was the other game that we wanted to recap. SEMO UNA, SEMO ended up winning this game pretty handedly, 37-15. Didn't really, I think, learn anything new about SEMO. Like, we kind of already knew that Paxton De Laurent's one of the better quarterbacks in the country, but he doesn't end up finishing that game. And then there was contribution from Carter Hensley. I would like to focus, though, on Tarleton, as I mentioned, which has been under a microscope, has been getting a lot of preseason love, has been ranked pretty highly by a lot of the polls, and has been propped up as this rising team that moved up from Division II that is going to continue to grow and progress and dominate. And they looked like that in the first half. They looked like it in the first half, like they were going to win this game 42-10, like they were just going to completely blow past McNeese in this game. McNeese looked like it was playing a completely different sport at times, but they got super complacent. And that is something that needs to be really watched closely, because if they get complacent in the future with harder games on their schedule, it is going to come back to bite them in the ass. Clifton McDowell, the former Montana quarterback who we were super familiar with, played to his typical chaotic nature, fumbling twice, losing it once, having one interception, and then went 14 for 20 for 245 yards. He also rushed for 67, leading his team. This was just generally a super chaotic game, but it was really, really lame with the way that Tarleton finished that second half.
Yeah, Tarleton's going to be under a microscope this year because they're still new and they still have... But now they have expectations. A lot of people had them in their preseason polls, I being one of them. And their first debut against McNeese, who was tragic last year, I think would have instilled more confidence in the program if they had won by a couple more scores. A 3-point win with a lucky stop and miss from McNeese to not go into overtime. McDowell led a game-tying drive. They could have won it. There was some... bad plays in the red zone or the green zone, wherever they were, that kind of stalled out the drive. But they had an opportunity to kick a field goal and send it at overtime and really make it a jump ball game. That would have just immediately knocked Tarleton off all the polls. They won the game, so you can't really lambaste them in the land of technicalities. But I'm not leaving this game thinking Tarleton State has has it all to make it. They would have to show me a lot more in the next games. What they do have, though, is a fantastic running back in Kayvon Britton. This guy
Super good game.
He is a dude. 25 rushes, 164 yards. We're not doing fat stats this week. There weren't enough games. That'll be back next week. But this is what the offense is going to be for Tarleton State, or what it should be. Victor Gabalis, a.k.a. Victor Adonis, he was dinged up all game. Not sure what the quarterback play is going to... What? You didn't like that one?
No.
We have made a point of this show highlighting the handsome quarterbacks in FCS football.
I think you're overhyping him.
He was a handsome gentleman playing quarterback. You look him up. You take another scan.
I think you're overhyping the way this guy looks.
Okay. Well, maybe I just have facial hair envy due to my face right now.
Yeah.
He's big and tall. He looked taller than... He's listed 6'3".
Yeah.
He looked taller than the 6'3" on the sidelines. Maybe it was just
I think you're overhyping
the
him.
bright purple jerseys. Regardless, Britton for Tarleton is going to be the focal point. He is a stud. He has all the tools of a great FCS running back. Speed, power, some shake, and he's going to be determining how their games go, I think. If he has a down game, I would expect Tarleton State to lose. That's just how I'm seeing it off of this first game.
I think one thing that just generally stood out, Tarleton's offensive line looked really big, which is always a positive for a team and their future outlook. It's hard to get good size at offensive line for especially a transitioning FCS team. So the size that they had across the whole line, they had some pretty good push, as you can tell from 164 yards rushing from Britton in this game. I will say, though, as you mentioned a second ago, like, what's the takeaway here for Tarleton? I'm pretty cooled on them. I think that they deserve to stay ranked, but they're kind of on the radar of a team that might get knocked around a little bit later on in their schedule. You can't finish a game like that. You can't get that complacent. You can't allow that many splash plays. They lost because of the big, huge gains that they allowed in the second half. And I even look at that first passing touchdown that McDowell connected on that was deep over on the right sideline that he threw. Those types of plays, you can't give those up. Defensively, I thought they did shine at times. There were some really big game-changing moments that they had defensively, but they felt like they were sleeping, and their inability, especially on the last drive where they had the football last, to just finish the game out was quite problematic. I'm not saying that this is a total burn to the ground, they're screwed type of a situation, but they need to impress me before I can really buy back into what Tarleton's going to do. They're going to stay on my ballot, but
yeah,
for now, which we're not voting this week, we're voting next week. Maybe they lose next week. I don't know who they're playing off the top of my head.
Well, you were also not very impressed with a Mr. John Tarleton. I remember that being one of your in-game comments.
I pointed out, I Googled what Tarleton was, and it was John Tarleton, and I thought that was kind of stupid because I was like, who's John Tarleton? Wait, I want to look this up. He was just a settler. I mean, I guess he's from New Hampshire.
I brought up the likes of Sam Houston, and then you defended him adamantly compared to the weaker John Tarleton.
Yeah, but Houston is an actual town, and Sam Houston is like a part of our country's history. I just don't. It looked like all he did was found the university. It says in his will, Tarleton left about $85,000, a considerable amount at the time, to establish a college in Stephenville, Texas, which eventually became Tarleton State University. He also directed that his land in Knoxville be used to set up the John Tarleton Institute for Poor, Worthy Youths of Good Moral Character.
Yeah, keep on knocking him, man.
A monument
keep on
and historical maker. Tarleton stands. Yeah, but I just don't think he did anything. Yeah, it sounds like he was a philanthropist, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Am I the only one that's like, what's the historical?
What? Yeah. Okay.
How many schools are just named after random guys? What I pointed out to you, I found out that there's a town in Texas called Goodnight, Texas, which top 10 worst town names I've ever seen in my life.
I don't mind it. What? I think I'd buy into it, and I'd crack the window open on a summer evening and have a lovely sleep. I think that's what I don't mind having maybe a kitschy name for a town. Give yourself a little personality, give it a little character. It's fine. Goodnight, Texas. What would you call that? The Northern Strip?
Oh, God, and this was named after another random guy, Charles Goodnight.
Oh, what?
This is so stupid. These people are made up. These people are not real. None of these people are real. This is fake.
Oh.
There's no way.
They named a town after him.
What did Charles Goodnight do?
Is this your envy creeping in? Because
No.
there's not a DeLeone, Minnesota yet.
No. Because not only was it a stupid name, but it's also a stupid last name. Oh, he's a big cattle guy. That's what his background was.
Well, that's big in Texas.
I don't understand.
I didn't know Goodnight could be a last name, personally.
Yeah, so again, we're just mailing it in. Yeah, his legacy was he is presented as a good and decent man. Is that what the threshold is for Texas? I'm going to find out that I'm criticizing these guys, and somebody in the comments can be like, well, actually, both of these people did X, Y, and Z amazing things for the state of Texas, and then I'm going to be the biggest piece of garbage, and I'm already a piece of garbage, but...
Yeah. Do you think a good and decent man now? It's kind of hard to find seeing this show and some of the listeners we got.
Apparently he was a folklore. Yeah, we don't have... Most of our listeners are not good and decent human beings based on the DMs I get from people.
Oh, goodness.
Apparently he was a vigilante? I don't know.
You know what? If you're an old-time vigilante, you can have a town named after you. That's a point in my books.
I'm dumbfounded. The history lesson that we're having, and I also appreciate it's not even really a history lesson.
Zero.
It's really quickly scanning Wikipedia articles and pulling out random sentences that caught my eye. We're probably missing a lot of context. Any other final thoughts? Okay, look, to kind of sum up thoughts on the Tarleton State game, though, I think that there's a clear trajectory for them in the next few years to become really competitive and good at the FCS level. And I look specifically at the size that they had on their O&D lines. Like you and I were talking about the left tackle that they had, number 65. His name is escaping me at the moment, but he has a really good build for an FCS tackle. You usually get these 6'3" sawed-off tackles at the FCS level, and he had a very, very long frame that is translatable to success. So if they can keep recruiting guys like this, they're going to be a good team in a few years. I just wonder where maybe their heads were at in the second half, and if that's something that they can recover from and just use this game as a building block of saying, hey guys, we got to stay fully composed and focused for all four quarters, and we can't do what we did against McNeese again. Yeah, the trenches looked good. I remember I was criticizing New Mexico's offensive line a good amount. I know it's a different game, but they all looked fat and slow, which I think I can say as a former fat, slow offensive lineman. Tarleton's different. They looked more athletic across the board. Their feet were moving in good synchronization. That's a good building block. If you have a good front five, or all you really need is a good front three and then two to be serviceable, and you got an offensive line that can move people and get the running game going. It's hard to get there, but once you have it, it's easy to sustain. So Tarleton, I think, could eventually start creeping up into the different tiers of FCS powerhouses. You know what I'm saying? They can start getting higher and higher in the rankings and start competing with better programs. Right now, it wasn't the best coming out party, but they got the win, and I'm not someone that's going to knock a win. I just can't do it, especially if you had the hype and you still held off, even by a missed field goal. Malik Pete is the tackle I was talking about. 6'6", 320, I think sums up. Held it really well. And for anyone who's wondering and listening, why is Joe so hung up on this? Guys, this is so important, having size at offensive line, and then also the proof that you can recruit size at offensive line. That is what separates good teams from great teams, average teams from good teams, is having big bodies. If you have bigger bodies on O-line and D-line, you will win even if the other team that you're facing out schemes you. Perfect example was this game. Yeah. Was that when they needed to make plays later on after they had allowed McNeese to crawl back in, they had the athletes, the bodies, just the general structure of a good team that they could come out with those stops or the first downs that they needed to do so. I think, one of the, this should be I'm sure it is a stat and it's trackable, but the clean pocket stat,
That it feels similar to like an offensive rebound to me, where if I'm making a bracket in March Madness, one of the first criteria I make between all matchups is which team gets more offensive rebounds. Why do I do that? They have an extra possession because of either effort, hustle, or a little bit of luck. And that equates in my mind to more possible points. Clean pockets do the same exact thing for me. If I see one team has way more clean pockets than the other, then that's going to be an indicator of success. And that's not breaking news for college football or football in general. Hey, keep your quarterback upright. But in the throes of a game, as you continue to watch, you start to kind of subliminally pick up, oh, this guy hasn't been touched in a while. Why are they still moving the ball like this? Oh, they're finding rhythm. The quarterback is getting settled in. It was similar in the Montana State New Mexico game. The pocket was it was murky and dirty all first half for Montana State, and that's something they need to rep immediately for the next weeks. They need to go blitz pickup, blitz coverage. Give me a hot call in case I start reading something, because the indication of how to get to Montana State right now, send the house at the quarterback. He has enough athleticism, and Malott does, to make something happen sometimes, but the leakiness when bringing a 6-man, 5-man pressure, too much. Other teams are going to really try to send the house and heat up the quarterback and get some hurried pressures and hurried deliveries.
Well, that's going to be it for our Week 0 recap of the top 2 games from the opening slate of FCS football. We're going to be back with a preview of Week 1, as well as throughout the week we're going to be live talking just general FBS football and some NFL thoughts. Folks, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the like button as well, and we will talk to you later.